Okay. Greetings, everybody. My name is Elizabeth, and I am a deacon. I will be the MC for tonight. Following a welcome by our good leader, you will be taken through a short Zoom tutorial by Elin Gouland, who's our social justice and advocacy consultant with the Diocese of Toronto, as well as with Reverend Deacon Allison Kemper, who are both our Zoom greeters. So I will now invite the Reverend Deacon Canon Claudette Taylor to welcome us here tonight.
Thank you, the Reverend Deacon Elizabeth. Welcome. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to session 2 of our series, The Art of Resistance, the Atlantic Slave Trade, Exile to Babylon. The series is sponsored by the Deacons of the Parkdale West Toronto Deanery and the York Credit Valley area of the Anglican Diocese of Toronto, with the support of a planning committee comprising of other clergy and lay members from this deanery and beyond. The Social Justice and Advocacy Committee Chair, Elaine, and we are grateful also for the support of the National Film Board of Canada. We are honored today to have a friend and invaluable member of this committee, who we see now in her yellow, Dr. Rita Cox, who highly recommended today's distinguished presenter, Dwayne Morgan, and she will introduce him later on in the program. We welcome our dear suffragan bishop, the Right Reverend Priscilla, who is also the diversity officer for the Diocese of Toronto. I will now invite Bishop Priscilla to do the land acknowledgement and the opening prayer.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here this evening and to be gathered. It would be nice to be gathered all together in person, but this is a good second best. It's lovely to see your faces and to participate with you in this way. We want to acknowledge that tonight's event is being hosted from Toronto on the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Anishinaabe peoples, and the Métis peoples. These lands are covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe and allied nations to peaceably share and sustain the land and resources around the Great Lakes. We acknowledge and offer gratitude for their stewardship of this land from time immemorial. We'll just take a quiet moment to collect ourselves, and then I'll open us with prayer. Gracious and Holy One of blessing, we give you thanks that we are created in your image and that together we form the rainbow people of God. We ask you to bless us in our mission this night. Bless our hearts and our ministries as we work to be the hands and feet of Jesus in our communities. All this we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Hello, folks. I'm Allison Kemper, and I teach for a living, and I do a lot of teaching online. And so I'm volunteered to help anybody, all of us, figure out how to use Zoom most effectively while we're together tonight. Many people have already figured all this out, so please be patient with me because you probably already know this already. But the most important thing to know is that you can turn off your microphone so that if your dog starts barking or your kids start screaming or whatever happens in your life, we don't all have to find out your personal business. So the mic, you just hit the mute button in the lower left-hand corner. Many people share. So are we good with that? Everybody knows about the mute button? I can move on, right? All right. So the next thing is many people share accounts, or I see somebody who's on their phone, and their identity is me. So if you need to rename yourself and you're on a computer, it's not too hard. You go to the top right-hand corner of your picture and you click those three buttons, and one of your options is rename. So if you'd like to, call yourself something else for the evening, that's fine. If you're on your phone, you don't have that option. So I'm happy to change your name. The hosts can do that for you. So the person who's named me on the phone may wish to do that. Don't know. But that's an option. Another really useful thing to know is, if you don't already know it, and you probably do, is that there's a button at the bottom called reactions. And if you click that, there's things you can put, beside your in the middle of oh, Bishop Priscilla has put a heart up. Very sweet. So you can also clap or cry or celebrate. But the other thing that's really useful is to raise your hand if you wish to take a turn speaking. Look what Diane Bestspotter has done. She's smiling. So please use those. It can get discouraging if you are teaching or presenting and nobody reacts. So a little bit of reaction is nice. Claudette, your hand is up. Can I call on you? You're muted, Claudette. Oh, the hand went away. All right. Claudette has two identities here. Now, as we go through, you need to know that it's best if you just keep your mute button on all the time. When you are speaking, be clear and concise, and we want to hear from you. In the smaller groups, you may want to take your mic off mute so that it's just a more easy conversation, because nobody's going to call on you in those groups. When it comes time to ask the guest speaker some questions, please put them in the chat, and then we can get to you after we've had a minute to sort of get them all listed and see which ones look the same and which ones look different. If you want to turn on your video, that's great. And if you don't want to, that's also fine. And we are trying to maintain a very respectful environment here. I know as an American by birth, they're all worried about talking to their relatives today over Thanksgiving dinner. So we've seen lots of articles in the papers about civility. And I don't know about you, but the conflict in the Middle East is making these conversations about almost anything fraught. So we'll be gentle with each other here tonight. And I appreciate all of your efforts to make this a wonderful evening. Any questions? Anything I can troubleshoot at this point?
Hello?
Hi, Rita.
Hi, everybody's seeing me, but I can't see me.
Weird. Well, we can see you, and it's a glorious yellow dress you have on. Or blouse or something. It looks quite elegant, so we can see you.
Okay, that's fine.
Can you see the rest of us?
I can see the rest. I see the names of, and yes.
But you can't see yourself. That's not fair. I'm sorry.
You may have hidden self view. If you click, Rita, if you click on the right hand side under your three dots, sometimes
a little earlier I looked and I clicked on gallery and I appeared.
Oh, if you're on speaker?
And then I went to speaker and I appeared there, but now I'm not there anymore.
Okay, because there's something called hide self view.
Yes.
And then I don't know how you unhide. I just hid myself. I think if you find yourself in, I don't know, I'm now here, I can't find myself anymore either.
Try looking in the participant list.
Yeah, I know. I'm doing that, and I'm looking at that, but it just offers me the chance of spinning myself or spotlighting myself for everyone or renaming, and I don't want to do that either. So it may be under yeah, participants invite. Anyway.
Great mysteries.
I don't know, but it is
It's not any of the commands I
okay, video settings. Go to the little camera that's next to the little microphone. It says, and click on that, and then click on video settings, and then I think you're able to do that.
Where it says video, start video?
Yeah, but click on the little arrow next to it, and then I think you should be able to do it. I'm just looking at that.
You can also be able to see yourself if you go back to view, and if you've hid yourself, then if you go back to view under gallery, the option will change to show self view. And once you do that, you return.
Well, there she's back.
You're seeing me?
We're seeing you.
Oh, there it is. Yes, exactly. Thank you. There.
Thank you, Eldarine. You're a genius.
Yes, go up to the top corner where it says view, and there's nine little boxes. Click on that and then say show self view.
I don't see it.
Okay, there's different commands for people on iPads too. There's
and I'm just wondering if we could move everybody else into the next stage and then continue to help Dr. Cox.
Good plan. Neville Edwards, your mic is on. Did you wish to speak? Okay.
Okay, so yes, now we will be moving into randomly assigned groups where we invite you to review the questions that were posted on the website under this session and should be in our chats. Once we go into the groups, Elin has said she will post them there and then have a brief discussion about these questions. And then when we all come back together, we invite you to share your insights in the chat. So
I'm just going to break people into, okay, how many people are we? 42? I'm going to break people into 6 breakout rooms. Okay. And here you are. So you'll get a message to join a room, so please do that.
I'm not sure what's happening.
if you haven't already done so, please join a room. I've assigned everyone to a breakout room in case you want to go there. Okay.
Okay.
So are we waiting for other people to come back? My group's all here. Claudette, do you know what's happening? You're muted. Claudette?
Okay, gonna wait a minute while people filter back in. Go.
Thank you, we're back.
Okay. So yes, as I mentioned earlier, please feel free to share your insights from this group discussion in the chat. We are now going to enter the main portion of this evening, which is our presentation.
And may I just mention that most of us had our mics on for the small groups, so we might want to turn them off now that we're all back together so that we don't interrupt the speakers.
Good point. After the presentation, we'll have a short Q&A portion, and so and then you can submit your questions for that as well. I now invite the Dr. Rita Cox to introduce our presenter, Dwayne Morgan.
It's such a great pleasure and a privilege to introduce this presenter whose career I have followed much proudly and from the beginning. I knew and listened and learned when he started, and the sensitivity, the vision, the wisdom that he showed even at the beginning of doing his Up From the Roots and his own poetry belied his age. And he has continued to grow and develop and re-educate us old folks and educate the new ones, and continues on his journey of excellence. Dwayne Morgan is a two-time Canadian National Poetry Slam champion. He began his career as a spoken word artist in 1993. In 1994, he founded Up From the Roots Entertainment to promote the positive artistic contributions of African Canadian and urban influenced artists. In 2022, Dwayne made the Shifter magazine list of outstanding Black men in Canada, while also winning the Toronto Arts Foundation Celebration of Cultural Life Award. And the 2018, the Sherry D. Wilson Golden Berry Award for Career Achievement in the Spoken Word. Morgan was a 2016 finalist for the Premier's Award for Excellence in the Arts. And in 2013, he was inducted into the Scarborough Walk of Fame. Morgan has received both the African Canadian Achievement Award and the Harry Jerome Award for Excellence in the Arts. He has performed for former President of the United States, Barack Obama, the Governor General of Canada, Macaulay John, the late leader of the NDP, Jack Layton, has shared the stage with many of Canadians' top artists, while opening for international artist Alicia Keys and recording with Canadian artists, including Drake. He has published 14 collections, including 2 children's books and an inspirational memoir. In 2009, Morgan's work was translated into French, culminating in the book, Le Making of Nous. Morgan has 10 albums to his credit, including a spoken word Christmas album, Silent Night. Dwayne collaborated in films and television and now appears on CBC with a Play Me podcast. In 2012, he performed at Super Bowl 46 in Indianapolis, Indiana, And in 2019, he founded and co-produced the inaugural Toronto Spoken Soul Festival. He, as a member of the Spoken Soul Collective, was a 2021 curator for Artworks Toronto, responsible for the public art inside of the Scarborough Town Center. His photography has been featured in Artwork TO and the Contact Photography Festival. There's a wide swath of talents developed from his spoken word, his wisdom, and all the wonderful talents that he has grown and shared with us. His work ethic has taken him across Canada and in many, many parts of the world. And his emphasis on quality and excellence has driven his success and has made him a well-respected component of Toronto's urban music community, as well as the North American and global spoken word scenes. Again, it's an honor to present this young artist. Welcome to you. I welcome to you, and I feel as if I'm part of a bit of your grandmother. And so proud to see you here today, still educating us, still inspiring us. Thank you for presenting to us tonight.
Thank you so much. It is definitely a pleasure. Thank you to everyone who is here, and it is great to be introduced by Dr. Cox, who again is, I have been lucky to have a community of mothers and grandmothers who have taken care of me and looked out for me my entire career. So it is not lost on me, you know, your place in my journey. So it is definitely an honor to be here, and that you invited me to be here today. So I want to share a little bit with everyone who's here, and then I look forward to the questions that might come up. I had hoped to be home for this, but then I had to end up bringing my daughter to a cheerleading practice, so I'm just in the parking lot here. But I've made a little makeshift studio to present to you from. So in the breakout room that I was just in, we were having a discussion about the idea or concept of, when people say Black people came from kings and queens. And one of the things that I was saying about that is that, when we say that, it's not a matter of, kings and queens are, perfect, but it's the notion that so many people have that we have come from nothing, that being able to say that switches the narrative a little bit. And I think we have to look at some of the ways that Africa is presented to us. When I was going through school, and I don't think much has changed, there was very little positive that I saw about Africa. And this is very deliberate, because we're not supposed to feel good about where we historically come from. If we also look down on Africa, it makes it easier to not hold people accountable for things that have happened and things that have been done on that continent. And 2 times now, in 2013 and this March, I've brought 2 groups of people from Toronto to South Africa. First time, 15 people came with me. The second time, 16 people came with me. And I remember the very first time I had no idea what to pack. I didn't know what the food was going to be like. So I put, Pringles and granola bars and all sorts of stuff in my suitcase, because it's like, oh my gosh, what are these people going to eat? Do they even have food over there? Again, because of all of the negativity that I had been fed my entire life about Africa and what Africa is, and everybody's poor and all of these kinds of things. And I remember feeling horrible about myself and extremely embarrassed when I arrived in Johannesburg in 2013, and we got to the hotel, And as I sat on the bed in the hotel, I looked out the window, and across the street was the Johannesburg Lamborghini dealership. And no one had ever told me that I would go to Africa and see a Lamborghini dealership. No one ever told me about any of these things I was going to see and experience that was completely contrary to what I had seen and heard my entire life until I decided to go on my own. So I think how we speak about Africa, has to change. And especially those who are lucky enough to go, we have to tell the story of what it is that we see. So there's a stereotype that exists about Black people and welfare. And the truth about that stereotype really depends on who's telling the story and why. Because I have lived on a continent born on free and cheap labor. I've seen colonial empires built off of the sweat equity of people now labeled as lazy. And how does this even make sense? When the world's biggest welfare recipients all live behind a gated fence and they're all white, still sucking money from the Commonwealth that has nothing in common with their wealth. Ask Canada how much we pay every year for them to have high tea and crumpets. I think it's high time for them to stand on their own 2 feet, maybe. That would make it easier for them to welcome Megan into their midst, a Black woman who gave up her job on Suits to follow suit, only to find out that she was not suited for the welfare life. Sorry, Harry, you're going to have to cut the cord and get a real job. Count on a Black woman to stir the pot. They're probably actually used to that. I mean, Black does go with everything, and we have been accessories for generations. Wet nurses, butlers, maids. Imagine pulling up a seat at a table that your kind usually only cleans and serves. Imagine the things seen and heard. Imagine when you advocate for yourself, you get called out for being out of turn. You see, this is what happens when we are welcomed into environments where we are tolerated but unwanted, forced to mix like water with oil, forgetting that we are a people who have never needed crowns to remind us that we are royal. Thank you all very much. So there's a very interesting thing that often happens in our community. People often say that when a woman is pregnant, it is, one of the happiest times in people's lives, in a couple's lives. They're bringing this new life into the world. But in many cases, in my community, there's a lot of anxiety that is tied with this, because people wonder, well, what if this child is a boy? What are the experiences that he is going to have? What is the life expectancy for this child? Because we know that in our society, Black boys are dealt with a certain way, treated a certain way. And for a lot of people, there's a fear that comes when they have sons who have to navigate this world as Black men. It was 4 a.m. when she woke me, and I can still remember the cold sweat on the back of my neck like it was yesterday. 16 years have now passed. And I can still remember the pregnancy test in my hand and how it felt like my heart and my world had stopped simultaneously, and nobody knows this. But at every doctor's visit, as he would perform routine ultrasounds, I would look from the ground to the screen, hoping, praying to God that none of the squiggly lines that I was seeing would confirm this little being as a boy. And I don't feel good about it. But I've lived a long time in skin despised simply for its hue, so every November I go populist. Not out of disrespect, I'm just not a fan of Remembrance Day, remembering that there has never been a plane sent to save us. We are the displaced, our bodies and religion stolen. We were given a new prophet as they used us to make profits. Ask Nike what a Black man is worth. For hundreds of years, we've been killed as a form of amusement, gunned down with no fear of repercussions, so don't blame me for not wanting to be burdened by the birth of a Black boy born into a world built on his back, forcing me to teach him how to write and his rights, knowing that even my greatest efforts can't keep him alive and his skin is a threat. So yes, I stood there, staring blankly at a screen, hoping, praying to God that none of the squiggly lines that I was seeing would confirm this little being as a boy, maybe. Having a girl would increase my chances of not having a child who'd grow up to be a hashtag trending, because the killing of Black men has been a trend since forever. So we write Black Lives Matter, not to try to inform others, but to try to convince ourselves in a world that is constantly showing us otherwise. And my heart can't help but break for those parents who have had their children snatched from their lives. It was an April afternoon when I found myself pacing around the delivery room, wondering if my prayers would be answered at 3:20. The most precious little girl was presented to me, and I cried uncontrollably for hours, knowing that I had just been blessed. Not because having a girl would make her worth more, but because we live in a world where Black boys will always be worth less. Thank you. So, as I go through this stuff, again, if there's questions, comments, feel free to put them in the chat, as you heard before. Feel free to use the reactions things, because who knows, you might forget, or maybe you're writing down questions or comments or whatever. I mean, whatever works. As I said, I'm just very excited for what kind of conversation we have after I share these pieces of my work with you. So there was a study that was done back in the 70s using dolls to look at how early people start to shape their ideas around race and value. And I took some of that study for this next poem, and then I added in some stuff from my life. And then after I share the poem, I'll explain to you why I wanted this to be a part of tonight's exploration. Michelle, age 4, white. Michelle, which doll is the pretty one? The white one. Raquel, age 4, white. Raquel, which doll is the mean one? The black one. Natasha, age 4, black. Natasha, which doll is the nice one? The white one. Keisha, age 4, black. Keisha, which doll is the ugly one? The black one. Keisha, which doll looks like you? The black one. By the age of 4, the seed of racism, self-hatred, and inferiority is already subconsciously planted in the brain. Like sugarcane, like cotton, like cash crops that will benefit those who grow it more than those who sow it, and don't I know it. As the father of a daughter who struggles to see herself on store shelves, these are little Black girl blues. You can find darker hued versions of white dolls that look nothing like you. Straight hair, straight nose, forcing parents to have to straighten things out, removing the kinks of self-doubt, becoming vigilant, parenting, becoming militant, but only if they get it. Only if they understand the damage being done and the need to protect her identity by any means necessary. Birthday invitations included a postscript, "Please no white dolls," which created their fair share of conversations, protection, seen as reverse hatred. The few dolls of a lighter hue that managed to sneak past our border wall soon found themselves missing like Native women in Canada. It is funny. This little thing called race, how it plays out from day to day and has us worshiping things that look nothing like us, whether dolls on store shelves or their version of Jesus. And these little things are always so much bigger, which is why she forgets cartoons but remembers every detail from Hidden Figures, and some will still see this as nothing. But I saw her desire to become a doctor after watching Doc McStuffins, because representation matters. It matters to see yourself reflected in the society in which you live. Not as a cliche or stereotype, but just as normal and positive. And maybe this is too much to ask when the fabric of our economic quilt happens to be anti-Black. Periodically, I will ask, if you could, is there anything about yourself that you would change? At 16 years of age, her answer has remained the same. No, I'm pretty awesome. Yes, you are, I always reply. Fist of pride held high, beaming on the inside, emanating out, proud that there's one less Black girl who refuses to play and be shaped by society's dollhouse. Thank you very much. we speak a lot about diversity and inclusion and race and racism and a lot of these things. And I always invite people to, go to Walmart, Toys R Us, any of these places, and go to the doll aisle, and you would be shocked that even in 2023, it is extremely difficult to find a doll that looks like my daughter. And you would say, well, Black people have been here forever. This is a no-brainer. It should be a no-brainer. But it is extremely difficult to find a doll with similar features to my daughter. Try finding an indigenous doll, a doll with a hijab. It's extremely difficult. So when a young child goes into these stores and goes into these environments and they go into the doll aisle and there's no doll that looks like them, even without having the vocabulary to articulate what is happening, they are being taught in that moment that you don't belong. Nobody wants you. You are not the choice. And then they look and they see all of the dolls that are there. And they say, oh, that's who's important. That's who's valuable. That's who I have to look like in order to be the choice. And in that moment, this little seed of negativity that says, I'm not good enough as I am, I need to look like somebody else, be like somebody else, is planted. And for many of us, this seed was planted when we were too young to even know that that seed was there. And oftentimes when we experience racism, microaggressions, it waters the seed that we often don't even know is there. And we say, oh man, I'm feeling a ways. I feel kind of weird. Yes, because that's the seed that has been planted that often lives within us. So I have gone places with my daughter and I've seen strangers come up and try to touch her and touch her hair. And I'm thinking to myself, you must have seen a Black person before. She can't be the first one. But this idea that you could just go and touch another human being is foreign to me, because I have never gone any place in all of my years and just decided to randomly touch a complete stranger, but people feel as though they can do that with us. And that's very interesting because it speaks to being other, being exotic, being a fetish. I tell people all the time, my family, my parents came here from Jamaica. And when they came here from Jamaica and they were 21 years old, they didn't know that they were Black when they came here. And what I mean by that is when they were in Jamaica, everybody looked like them. So race wasn't really a thing. Sure, you had, the brown skins and the this, and there's, different things or whatever. But for the most part, Black wasn't a thing. They became Black when they got to Canada. And they had to figure out, what does this mean to be Black? And they saw how people treated them, things people felt that they could just say to them, opportunities that were given or denied to them simply because of the color of their skin, simply because they were Black. So for a lot of people, their first experience with being othered, with being made to feel less than, happens in Canada, where we speak about all of this multiculturalism, but what does that really look like in practice? To be a gift, born into this world, male, packaged in Black skin, is to be constantly reminded that your life is disposable, that it lacks meaning and value and isn't protected by the law. You live with the knowledge that justice is a drunk that will not be served. We, the Black gifts, are the first to be accused and the last to be believed. We are the guilty until proven innocent, the aggressor despite the evidence. We are the hoops for which loopholes are made. We are the sambos, the puppets, our value determined by the worth we bring our puppeteers. So dance, Negro, dance. Rap, Black boy, rap. Run, boy, run. But what about those of us who are regular, who are average, who don't have gifts or talents that the world wants or needs, who are just their bodies, packaged in black skin, stuck on modern day plantations, being abused at will, and people wonder why we seldom smile and it seems like our looks could kill. We are the ones who put basketballs in our sons' palms before they can walk and only dribble, with the hope that they will grow to dribble beyond their packaging. We are the ones that make elevators go quiet, purses and loved ones clenched tighter. We are the deer that stare down the barrel of guns, but there is no license needed to hunt us. We are the suspicious packages at the airport or in any store with goods that we aren't supposed to be able to afford, whether in a hoodie or a suit, accused of driving while black in minivans or coupes. We are the black licorice discarded at Halloween, the silhouette used for target practice by the police, the black men who spend their days wanting nothing but to be human with respect and dignity. So this is for every Trayvon, Jaquan, Marcus, Jordan, Dwayne, every black man considered a nobody despite having a name, for everyone who has ever felt the pain of race, for the empty seat beside a black man on the train, for we are the ones who meet death on cold asphalt, discarded like roadkill. We are the ones, worthless bodies packaged in black skin that nobody seems to want. We are the voiceless. We are the ones. So I think one of the most beautiful things about us as a community is our resilience, is the fact that so many things have been done to destroy, to discourage, and we're still here. We still thrive. We still do exceptionally well in life. And I think, you know, that ability to persevere, that ability to find joy even in despair is something that is very unique to us. You know, if there's a hurricane in Jamaica on Thursday, there's a song about it on the radio on Sunday and a dance for it on Monday. And it's just the way that we can take all of these things that happen to us, all of these things that people think should break us, and utilize them to create things, to be innovative, to change the narrative of these things. I believe is a great skill of ours that has allowed us to survive so many of the things that have been done to Black people around the world historically. So this next poem kind of looks at it through the lens of sports. Why are the Black poets so aggressive and always talking about race? Even here, under the facade of a safe space, it happens. Passion mistaken for aggression. It seems as though every time we strive to be great, we are broken down to nothing but our race. Mario Balotelli. Where do you call home when you have received no acceptance in the only place you have ever known? You proudly wear an Italian flag that others wish that they could pull from your chest. And while it says Balotelli on your jersey, they have called you King Kong, dehumanized you with no red cards, treated you like a blackhead on the face of the beautiful game, thrown bananas at you as you have walked onto the field. It is amazing how a lone one can feel on a pitch full of men. If only I could score enough, win enough. Maybe I could outrun my skin, but no, Mario. At some point, we have to stop running when the issue isn't us. We have to stop shifting to fit into boxes when we were born enough. You see, the scales of equality seem to have a permanent slant, allowing you to get more jail time for killing a dog than for killing a Black man. So we step to the mic, victims of our skin tone, step onto court, stages, fields, eager to play, knowing that for us, it will always be more than just the game. Fact. White athletes are praised for their hard work, discipline, and knowledge of the game. Fact. Black athletes are praised for being naturally gifted freaks of nature with natural athleticism. Ironically similar traits when we were being auctioned off as slaves. I guess it's no mistake why they call it color commentary, as Serena's body is ripped apart, scrutinized more than her skills, her dominance, not tied to decades of discipline and devotion, but to being masculine, and aggressive, a double fault for the masses who believe that there is only one mold for what a woman should look and sound like. So in 2023, we still ask, is the US open to a Compton kid crip walking across courts with no care for your insecurities, casting shadows with her wingspan, and while some would love to see her crash and burn, she remains that phoenix, rising from the Arthur ashes, affirming that there will always be hate. But never let that stop you from striving to be great. No matter your talent or your job, you can be that tiger mastering courses you were never meant to play on. So for the Jamaican immigrant suspended from school for being too loud, for the poets accused of being aggressive when they step in front of a crowd, release that aggression like a Serena Williams serve at an open mic or a grand slam without ever giving a damn for what anyone has to say. Because these odds are stacked against us, but we still show up to play. So I have one more poem that I'm going to share with you, and then we will get into any kind of questions that people might have for me or about any of the poems that I've chosen to share this evening. Again, I want to thank you for this opportunity to be able to share my work and add to the discussions that we're having, around slavery, past, contemporary, etc. So I'm going to end on this note. On your mark, get set, and so it begins. On the dark continent of enlightenment, the place from where all history comes, are people who were so ahead of their time, they were sending text messages when they only had drums. Out of the starting blocks, we were off to an early lead as world travelers and explorers, sharing our philosophies, creating universities and structures that would make the world stop and wonder before passing the baton on to the relay's next runner in the Caribbean Sea, who lost a bit of ground through the Middle Passage and slavery, but nobody said that the race would be easy. So for over 400 years, they continued to run, limping through the pain, knowing that cramps will come and it's going to hurt sometimes. But you've got to focus and keep going through the plantations, the lynchings, and the hate, even when the spectators in the stands call you other than your name, because it is not what we are called, but what we answer to that is important. Victory is an uphill climb, and we've got to continue to rise like Lazarus, knowing that even the slightest of steps can mean so much. Sister Rosa Parks sat down to stand up, so I can't give up as I try to make sense of this baton that has been placed in my hand while I struggle just to be accepted as a man in this world that seems more concerned with whether or not I'm endowed down south, and I'm all about being endowed in the places where it counts in my family and my community. Because knowledge of self is like a garden. If it is not cultivated, you cannot reap a harvest. Victory will come to those who choose to run the hardest. And it really doesn't matter if you know the secret, because not everyone will believe enough in themselves to do something with the information. No one was made to be a spectator in life. We are all the active participants in the race to fulfill our destiny. So when the baton comes, take it and run, because failure isn't a crime that aiming too low is. Because if you reach for the top of a tree, you might never get off the ground. But if you shoot for the stars, you might at the very least get to the top of that tree. And I might not get to the finish line with you, but I will continue to strive to carve out my own space before passing this baton on to a new generation of runner, confident in victory because success, it runs in my race. Thank you all very much.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing so candidly your art and your experience with us. As we said earlier, we will now move into our Q&A session. The most important note is that we are aiming to wrap things up at 8:20. So if we can keep things concise so we can have lots of questions and discussions, the Reverend Canon Mark Regis and Elin Goulin will start moderating.
So I think it's always best if our presenter has as much free reign to share their art and their perspectives. And Dwayne, we just want to thank you once again for putting us in a position. One of the greatest gifts, I believe, of art that God has given to us is that it causes us to stop and behold, just to listen, and helps to guide us into reflection without avoidance or becoming overwhelmed. And I wonder, just to kick things off, as we get questions coming into the chat box, of which we won't unfortunately have a lot of time to get to, but we'll do our best. What can you share with us about a perspective we might hold that causes us to behold, to not avoid, and not become overwhelmed?
Well, I think one of the things that we have to do, and it's hard to say. I mean, people might become, overwhelmed by some of these things. Is we really have to deconstruct a lot of what we've been taught, and the understanding of the world. We have to be able to ask, where does this understanding come from? Who told me these things? Why do I think these things? I mean, it's very interesting. When I was in high school, none of the African kids wanted to admit to being African. Whereas now, Afro beats is very popular. So all the African kids feel like, yeah, we're cool. We're it. But the African kids, when I was in school, none of them wanted to be, they would lie and say that they were Caribbean to not have to deal with how people thought of Africa and Africans at the time. So I think really questioning our information and where it comes from and who is telling the story is very important, because typically history is the story of the people holding the pen, and that's usually the person with the most power in the situation, not necessarily the people who had history happen to them. So I think, hearing more of those stories helps us to unpack things a bit differently.
Thank you for that. We have a question that just popped up in the chat box from Jeff. Dwayne, how did you first get involved in slam poetry? And how has poetry evolved over the years?
Well, it's interesting because, I got involved with poetry when I was in grade 12. I wrote something for a Black History Month assembly, and that was the first poem I ever wrote. And it just got me on this journey from there. Poetry slams are poetry competitions, and I actually introduced those to Ontario in 1998. And now those have kind of grown and blossomed, all over. And I think, the seeing more people being able to tell stories is very important. As the world becomes more and more, digital, human storytelling is going to be more and more important. As artificial intelligence becomes more a part of our lives, listening to other human beings tell their stories is going to be more and more important. So storytelling, poetry is like the first art form that is there, because for many cultures, our history is told through the stories.
Amen to that. Here's another question that just came in from Pam, that we were provided a piece about being an ally to view in advance of your presentation today. And what can you say about what it means to be an ally? What does it mean for someone today to be an ally, and practical things that we can do?
Really to be an ally, I think, it's become sexy in the last couple of years. Oh, I'm an ally to this group, that group, or whatever. And one of the things that I always try to say is never call yourself an ally. Through your actions, the people who you believe you're an ally of should be able to say, that is my ally, through your actions. So we often forget the power and privilege that we exercise when we say, I am an ally. Like, you're just giving yourself a title without having any receipts, without showing what have you done. And I think, allyship requires us to have something at stake. You have to have something to lose, because for many of us who are out there, living life, we're losing our lives, we're losing opportunities, we're losing all sorts of things. So to be an ally means you must put something at risk. You got to have some stake in the game, because then that's true allyship, because now you're like, no, I'm in this with you. I'm not over here and then I'm just gonna, show up at this thing and wave and take a picture and then go home and I didn't do anything. What is it at risk for you? So are you putting your your neck on the line to speak up for somebody else who doesn't have a voice in a certain environment? Are you challenging people who are in power on behalf of somebody else who's not going to be listened to, but you know that your voice will be listened to? So in our own circle of influence, in our own ecosystem, what are tangible things that I can do to move the needle in some way, shape, or form, where I'm actually putting something of my own at risk, at stake here, to advocate for somebody else?
Thank you. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to make sure we have a couple of questions that have come in quickly. Yeah. And I wanted to make sure we didn't lose Howard's question on thoughts of, you spoke really well. I personally enjoyed your narrative about the doll. What's the impact on Black children of seeing only white figures and images in churches? You want to speak to that?
I believe that is also, very, very dangerous, because it also, again, creates a situation that says these people are better. It creates this idolized kind of thing. And, oftentimes when I go to schools, when I go to certain corporations, you just walk in and it's like picture after picture of just white people, white people, white people. So, Black people, we're constantly in a position where we're navigating whiteness. And people don't even realize, if you weren't white, what this might feel like walking down this hallway of just picture after picture. And so, like, we're constantly inundated with that. And, we're working towards, trying to create greater equity and change and these kinds of things. But it feeds into that narrative that starts in the Walmart of not seeing the doll. And then everywhere you go, it's just like, the people in power are all white. And then you just never feel like you're meant to be there.
So thank you for that. I mean, as people who, several of us who do worship on a Sunday morning, we've seen these images for years and years. And I think that there's been a progression of a reinterpretation of the impact of what these images actually communicate at the deepest levels of our spirituality. So appreciate that response. Here's a question. How have people responded to your work, your poetry, as a means of educating them on race or correcting the narrative they have heard? Do you have any examples of how your work has made an impact on people's lives?
I mean, I can only say just based on what people have told me in emails that I've received, but I do a lot of work in school boards right across the province, working directly or speaking directly to students, but also speaking to teachers about, unconscious bias and things they might say, and how this affects, young people of color. So even tomorrow morning, I'm going to be in St. Catharines talking to 200 teachers there about the impacts of race on education, and, making sure that they understand how to get the most out of young people of color. So that is the most tangible thing I could say about that. Is the fact that I'm just kind of actively always doing that, especially in the realm of education.
May I ask something, or may I say something, Dwayne?
Of course.
First of all, as you spoke, I heard things that my son had told me while he was in school. And he is here now. His name is Dwayne. And he said, "Thank you, Dwayne, for your poetry. It really felt as though I was hearing my experience reflected through your words. Thank you for giving me that mirror." And I want to thank you, because it was right on. It was dead on, all that you said.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for taking the time to respond to some of these questions. There's so much more. There's so many other places we can go. And once again, your Your poetry paints a picture for us and leads us into a place that not only is descriptive, but in a kind of magical way, gives us some of the resources to process that truth. So thank you very much for that. And I want to turn things over now to Leonard Leader, who has some words for you.
Good evening, everyone, and Dwayne in particular. Am I coming through?
Yes.
Yep.
Wonderful. Well, Dwayne, I have the pleasant and fortunate opportunity to say thank you on behalf of the group for sharing your work with us tonight and for adding to our discussions. If I were to summarize very quickly how I feel about tonight, I'll use the 3 I's. First of all, it was quite informative. And for many of us who have looked at this topic for a number of years, there was still some interesting anecdotes and bits of information which I'm sure will serve us well. Secondly, it was quite interesting. And the way you integrated the stories and certainly your innovation by using poetry. But I just wanted to say the piece of poetry that really resonated with me most is facing the reality that there might be hate, but let us not prevent us from being great. And so on behalf of the group, thank you very much, and may God continue to bless your efforts and your initiatives in just taking the word out there, the spoken word. Thank you, Dwayne.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for attending, and thank you, Dwayne. As everybody has echoed their thanks, I add that to add my voice to those thanks. It really was like I was just so not mesmerized, but so engaged through your poetry. Really spoke, really. And I'd like to take this time now to invite everyone to our 3rd session, which is January the 18th. You can register now if you want to get registered. The title of our next session is Emancipation and the Price of Liberty. Our guest artist will be Henry Gomez, and Henry, also called King Cosmos, is well known internationally and nationally as a leading musician of Caribbean music. As an educator and writer and musician, he's got a Master's of Fine Arts degree, by the way. Henry uses his skills to keep the Calypso culture vibrant, and he is actively engaged in bringing Calypso to Canada. So I'm really looking forward to this next session, and I'm sure the energy that will be generated through his presence. So please register now for January the 18th, and I look forward to seeing everybody return on January 18th. And I'll pass it over to the Reverend Hannah, Deacon Hannah. Oh, Hannah, forgot your last name. Say our closing prayer. Johnson. Isaac Johnson. Johnstone.
Just before you jump in, Hannah, if I could just say a quick word, Dwayne, I appreciate that almost everybody on this call has a word to say. So I am just taking liberties here. But I wanted to say, Dwayne, that actually your poetry broke my heart.
Yes.
So it was profound. It was beautiful. It was very strong and very, very moving. And
Yes.
I heard a lot of pain in it. And I thank you for sharing that pain with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let us pray. God of holy blackness, Spirit of abundance, Mother of hope, grant that we, through the strength of your divine hand, might protect and serve one another. Make all forms of hatred cease, unmask all systems of corruption and power, Drive out all fears and prejudices in our day. Creator God, you are as near as our breath, and as close to us as the contours of our hearts and minds. May your presence be a balm to those who are suffering, and a bright flame to those who are causing injury. Rupture the status quo of violence that infects our world, and teach us through your divine word to reject the lies of any false peace in favor of the presence of your dangerous justice. We pray in your name, your Son, the peacemaker, and the sacred Spirit. Amen.
Amen.